welcome back. It's still Galaxy Today, and you saw that report there, which sort of gives you like a background info on what our topic of discussion is and what the issues are. We're discussing Magu's re-nomination. Joining us in the Lagos studios to look at this issue, we have the Senior Assistant Registrar for Wesley University in Ondo State, Barrister Magneza Fashion. Good morning. Good afternoon, rather. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right. Let's start first by asking you, how you perceived this whole issues, the issue of nomination, re-nomination, and rejection, amongst other things. How do you perceive the whole issue?
Well, let me say it's the beauty of democracy that is playing out, because the fathers of the theory of separation of powers, French Montesquieu, advocates for separation of powers, i.e. that the executive should have its say, the legislature should have its say, and the judiciary should also have its say. To the extent that that couldn't have happened during military era, in which legislative powers and the executive powers were concentrated in the Nigerian armed forces. To the extent that we are having this play out, I think it's the beauty of democracy, in the sense that it helps us to go into the roots of our national life, into our democratic values, and to be able to interrogate ourselves. That is to say that nobody is sacrosanct. Since we started talking about this issue of war against corruption, let me say that in the history of mankind, corruption had always been in existence. It hasn't been a new thing. Writers of literary works that have preoccupied themselves with writing about African problems in post-colonial era. You mentioned Chinua Achebe, Ayikwe Ama, Wole Soyinka, a couple of them. They had always treated the issue of corruption. And so if we now decide that for real we want to make it an issue of national policy to address the level of decadence in our society, I think it's a lot of democratic values that should be appreciated that is coming to the front burner of national discourse. To that extent, however, it's also very important to recognize that democracy will not be the kind of value system we are trying to embrace if it does not deify individuals. Because if you remember what happened in the holy books, when Elijah was running away from Jezebel, and he told God that God, in the whole of Israel, I'm the only person that has not bowed for Baal. God said, no, that in the whole of Israel there are 700 people. When I contested election to the National Assembly in 2007, in Sule Constituency 1, together with Femi Gbajabiamila and Eto, having been in the media for the better part, excuse me, having been in the media for the better part of my first degree education, I went around some media houses, and the question was that, what do I have to contribute? And I felt that the society has a lot to learn from the fact that Obafemi Awolowo in his time said that the worst form of democracy is always better than the best form of dictatorship. And so, to that extent, to the extent that we can look at ourselves in the eyes and said, if you are presenting a candidate, we need to know exactly where the person is coming from. And that informed one of the articles I wrote when I was keeping a column with Daily Independent. The title of the article is Much Ado About Ribadu. Because it got to a point in which Nigeria was almost going to deify an individual. And I think that if we are going to strengthen the institutions of democracy in Nigeria, we should play down the individuals that are occupying the place. And so to that extent,
which is sort of what has played out.
Exactly.
I like the fact that to an extent it looks like the Senate sort of demystified, that power of the president to a large extent.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, time was when the cascades of decrees were rolling from the top to the bottom, and then people had to be whipped into line. To the extent that in the 21st century, Nigeria is experiencing democracy, and they can look at the president in the face and say no, you can't send that to us again. To that extent, national discourse is going on, and I think that it's good for democracy and it's good for our common humanity that we can interrogate some. But then
again, my concern now, the issue for me is that there was a supposed report, from the DSS to the Senate, which were some issues that made him to be, refused in the first instance, rejected in the first instance. And then again, the presidency or the president now forwarded the same report sent by a very strong, security arm of government. So what does it really tell? Because I really don't get it. I mean, there was a report, that rejected the Magu's confirmation. Next again, the president discountenanced it as it is. What does it really tell of all of it?
It portends a lot of dictatorship, totalitarianism. If there are issues relating to the candidate you are presented to the Senate, to the legislature, they have a right to interrogate that credential, and they have a right to, in the interest of Nigeria, to find out exactly where is he coming from, what are his activities aimed at. All right. Otherwise, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. And so the idea of democracy is checks and balances.
But aside from that, the dictatorship that you're talking about doesn't really tell for a president to have said or to have alleged that there was no basis for the allegations. Does it really speak volume of the credibility of the economic, of the DSS?
Well, if the president is saying that, it should be based on the fact that he has investigated that, because when there are allegations, there are bound to be an investigation. And so the Nigerian public will want to find out exactly, has those things, issues raised, been investigated? If it is yes, if it is on the basis of that, because when you look at the issues of ideals in a society, you talk about fact, you talk about the truth, you talk about comments. And so you say comments are free, facts are sacred, truth is eternal. All right. The responsibility of members of the media, like we are seated here, our fourth estate of the realm, is to hold the government accountable to the people. And so comments are free in our jurisdiction here. But for lawyers, facts are sacred. Lawyers want to find out exactly what the facts on the table. It's the philosopher that is looking for the truth. Lawyers are not essentially looking for the truth; they're looking for the facts. All right. So to that extent, the Nigerian public want to be enlightened.
But most of the time, a lot of us assume facts are truth.
All right. And so we must be able to draw a line between what is executive power and what is legislative power. And not one arm of government should ride roughshod on the other.
Okay, let's go to Ibadan for a bit. We have on standby joining us from our station there, Barrister Femi Aborishade, who is a legal luminary. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us, sir.
Good afternoon, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Okay, I want to still stay a bit on these allegations. Okay, I want to stay on these allegations for a bit. Now there were allegations by the DSS, according to their report, about his apartment and how much it was rented for and from whom the money came out. Plus issues of him flying first class everywhere and frolicking, dining and whining with supposed people who were under investigation. Are all these not criminal allegations? And then I wonder, if such allegations or such things were detected by the DSS, truthfully, should they not have been, reported at the appropriate quarters? Because a crime is a crime, regardless of who is in the middle of it. I'm wondering why this wasn't reported maybe to the police or maybe the ICPC, so that it can be followed properly. Are these allegations not big enough for it to be taken a step further?
Yeah, thanks very much. I think your question is a very fundamental one, and it goes to the root of the nature and character of the fight against corruption by the APC federal government. The allegations that the chairman of the EFCC stays in a rented apartment costing over 40 million naira per annum, and he is a public officer. The public will be interested to know, is it a fact that the chairman of the EFCC stays in a rented apartment costing over 40 million naira? Is it a fact that the chairman, is the allegation true? Is it a fact that the chairman flew in a first-class in a first class flight, when there is a standing policy of the federal government for all public officers to fly third class? Is it a fact that the chairman of EFCC hobnobs with people he is supposed to be investigating? So if these allegations exist, I agree with you. The first thing is that he ought to have been, brought to book. He ought to have been charged, investigated and charged, publicly. Be that as it may, even though such a charge has not occurred, I agree that the Senate has the right under section 4 of the Constitution to agree to the nomination by the president or to reject the nomination. It's a question of checks and balances. Under the Constitution, section 4 provides for the legislative power. Section 5 provides for the executive power of the presidency and other executive arms of government. And section 6 provides for the judicial powers of our courts. Therefore, what has played out, as the colleague in the studio there has said, is a beauty of democracy in a way. We have to choose whether we want to live in a country of laws, in a country ruled by predetermined rules and laws, or we want to live under a country ruled by the wishes, the whims and caprices of the ruler. And I think Nigerians have voted to live under a written constitution. That constitution provides that the presidency, the executive, can only execute the laws that are made by the legislature. And particularly, as far as the EFCC is concerned, Section 2 sub 3 empowers the president to appoint the chairman of the EFCC, but that appointment shall be subject to confirmation by the Senate. The moment the Senate rejects a nominee, that person cannot be represented, because that will mean that the presidency is saying, I don't care about the allegations. The executive, the presidency, is not in a position to carry out the investigation. We cannot have an executive investigation. And it actually also shows deep division within the presidency. The presidency nominated the acting chairman as the substantive chairman. Within the presidency, a report came out indicting the nominee of Mr. President. It shows, in a way, the possibility that the president is not in control. But whether the president is in control or not, we have no choice to live by the provisions of the Constitution. And the Constitution also goes ahead.
I should just bust in here for 1 minute. You can hear me, Barrister Adeoshade? All right, okay, right now, okay, the question, right, there's a question I just quickly want to throw in right now. Since the president has actually faulted all the issues in the reports, could it really mean that the DSS could have concocted the story or the report, or could that just be the issue, or could it be that some people at the DSS just have some axe to grind with the helmsman of the EFCC? What could be the issues really?
position to tell whether the SSS, and by the way, the use of the term DSS is illegal, is unlawful. It does not exist in our laws. What we have in our laws is State Security Service, and there is no law that recognizes any DSS. It's an administrative terminology. It is the SSS, State Security Service, that we have. But the point I'm making is that I am not in a position to determine whether the allegations against the acting chairman of EFCC, whether the allegations are concocted or not. Precisely the concern, my concern, and the concern of ordinary Nigerians is that the presidency must tell us whether those allegations are true. The chairman of EFCC lives in Abuja or wherever he may be staying. The point we want to know, the fact we want to confirm, we want the presidency to confirm or dismiss, is whether where the acting chairman of EFCC stays, whether it costs over 40 million naira. If it costs over 40 million naira, how did the acting chairman of EFCC, how did he source that money? What is his salary per annum? I know he cannot be earning anything close to 40 million naira altogether. For him to be able to afford to stay in a place costing over 40 million naira. And if that were so, then such a person cannot be a proper and fit person to be the chairman to carry out the fight against corruption. So we are interested in being told the presidency owes us that obligation. Tell us, where does he stay? What is the cost? Is it true that he also flies in first-class flight, contrary to the policy of the government? So I'm not in a position to say the allegations are true or not, or whether they were concocted or not. We are interested in the presidency coming out to tell us the truth, rather than dismissing them and say, this is my candidate, this is my nominee, and you must just approve him. No.
Barrister, we have to butt in again, because time is really not our friend on the show. I have one quick last question for you before we let you off, so we can come back to the studio. Now, Magu, in the recent past has been more like the right-hand man of Mr. President Buhari, especially in his anti-corruption war. Now, since there is now some discrepancies as to his re-nomination as chairman of EFCC, I want to ask, will this not be the beginning of the collapse of the anti-corruption war that Mr. President is currently fighting?
Well, personally, I do not see any fight against corruption in Nigeria, with Magu or without Magu. If you have any serious fight against corruption, the allegations against the secretary to the government of the Federation, Babachi Lawa, ought to have compelled the secretary to the government of the Federation to resign, or to be asked to be brought to book. This is a man whose company was awarded a contract to clear grasses. The contract was awarded to his own company, or at least a company in which he had interest. The Senate established that the worth of that contract was actually 48 million. It was awarded for 248 million. And the Senate committee established that 200 million naira out of the 248 million was transferred to his personal account. And such a person remains as the secretary to the government of the Federation under a regime that claims to be fighting corruption? No. I think that what we have seen in recent time conclusively and definitively tells us there is no fight against corruption. There's also only a fight against corrupt people who are not friends of Mr. President, and those who are friends of Mr. President are free to engage in corrupt practices. How many ministers do we have who were former governors, who are earning salaries as former governors and are still earning salaries as ministers? And we say we have a regime that is fighting corruption. Those ministers belong to the same cabinet, claiming to be fighting corruption. No, there is no fight against corruption in Nigeria. I have not seen any. And in particular, as far as the acting chairman of the EFCC is concerned, his continued stay, I have nothing against him. I cannot verify, all the allegations against him. But from the point of view of Section 4 of the EFCC Act, he can no longer continue as chairman of the EFCC, because Section 4 of the EFCC Act provides that whenever there is a vacancy, a successor shall be appointed to complete the tenure of the person who was removed. The tenure of the person Ibrahim Magu succeeded was to expire in February 2016. Before February 2016, another person ought to have been nominated, or Magu himself ought to have been nominated and confirmed by the Senate. And once he has been nominated now and rejected, from the point of view of Section 2 sub 3 and Section 4 of the EFCC Act, whatever the EFCC does from now is a bundle of illegalities.
So much indeed for joining us on the program today. I'm afraid we have to let you up because of the time. Thank you so much. Your contributions were fantastic. That has been Barrister Femi Aborishade, who joined us from Ibadan. Now back to the studio. We've been joined by yet another guest. This time he's also a legal practitioner.
From All Lawyers Affair.
Barrister Destiny Takon. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us, Barrister.
We still have Barrister Magneza Fashion.
Okay, let us take it from where Barrister Aborishade said that all of that stuff does not really indicate the true anti-graft war, because another civil society here in the news, Advocates for Social Justice, they've actually expressed disappointment, saying the Buhari's insistence on getting Magu to be the chair of the EFCC is a mockery of his anti-graft war. Would you really agree to that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is ridiculous, to say that after the rejection of Magu by the Senate.
But was he actually rejected?
He was rejected. If he's not rejected, why do you have re-nomination? Why the term re-nomination? You're re-nominating because he was rejected. So there's no argument about that. Whether it was a full plenary Senate committee or whatever, there's an admission. Everybody's common ground that he was rejected. If he wasn't rejected, why are you re-nominating him? You're re-nominating because you nominated him and he was rejected. And now you insist on a man who was rejected, who is supposed to be the head of an anti-graft commission. Like my colleague said, nothing personal against Mr. Ibrahim Magu. Of course, I had known him while he was in Lagos at the EFCC. I mean, before, not today. Now, but the point is, we're talking government, we're talking law, we're talking the business of governance. It is not done. How would the world see us? How would the world view us? All of the allegations against him, they are very grave allegations. That in some other jurisdictions, a man who is in that position will simply say, look, get somebody else. I don't even want to get involved anymore. If, like he said, and I repeat, your accommodation, official accommodation, that is valued, so to say, why would even in a government that proceeds to fight corruption and to block wastages, the official residence or accommodation of the head of EFCC will cost 20 million naira? I mean, it's ridiculous. And then what was paid was 40. Furnishing was 43 million by a presidential aide who have been under investigation. It's simply telling that the president is making the EFCC. I agree, it's an executive, part of the executive arm of government. But of course, the chairman of the EFCC and the commission is supposed to operate with independence, with fairness, without having to be an appendage. You insist that it won't be Magu. I know lots of people in EFCC, good people in EFCC, that could take that position. So why the insistence on Magu? Is he the only competent person in EFCC after he's been rejected to head an anti-vice organization?
I'm just thinking out loud that maybe why Mr. President wants Magu back there is because he is the one he started working with, in his anti-corruption war, and maybe he wants him there to what politicians use continuity. Or
maybe it might just be that the man Magu himself is actually one who is actually formidable in the fight against corruption.
It's not a personal thing. The EFCC is a creation of statute. There's a mandate, there's a legal mandate. Anybody can fit into the shoes. All you need to do is walk in tandem with the terms, the enabling act, the EFCC Act. It is there. So it is not a Magu thing. If Magu was never born, if he wasn't a Nigerian, there will be EFCC and somebody will head EFCC.
That's true.
God forbid, if Magu were to fall down and die now, somebody will head EFCC. So it's not it's an institution. It's not about an individual. We're being given the impression that EFCC is nothing without Magu, which is not correct. More so with all of the allegations against him. I mean, if such allegations, grave allegations, are meted out or anybody's indicted to that degree, if a government is transparent and indeed fighting corruption, it devolves on that government to nominate somebody else.
Okay.
Say, in the light of these allegations, go and face them.
Exactly.
Let them be investigated.
Exactly.
So why are you renominating the same
these
man?
allegations are not, they're not,
they're grave.
So, they are grave allegations, whether they are true or false.
That's right.
It should be investigated properly.
And I don't feel the public, if anything has changed whatsoever, the public or the responsibility should be on the president or the executive to tell us what changed in this report.
Exactly.
You see, that trickles down from the ideological standpoint of political life in Africa here. We have this political recycle bin mentality, i.e. that when an individual occupies an office, he becomes deified, he becomes a god. There isn't any quality that is in me that couldn't have been in somebody else. And the other time when I was contesting the election, somebody was asking me if I were, who do I think should be the president of Nigeria? I said myself, of course. I'm capable.
Yes.
All right? If it is education, I have education. If it is whatever, knowledge, I have it. And so what else are we looking for? The preoccupation of the early philosophers in the members of the Atlantic School of Philosophy was whether they're between change and non-change. And when a political party comes up with the idea of change in a society, it could be nebulous, because some people will tell you that there's change is constant, all right, that nothing is actually permanent. But some other people would tell you that nobody can step into the same river twice because fresh water is ever flowing on you. Now, if the president is coming against the backdrop of the fact that he was once a head of state of Nigeria, and Nigerians are tossing those guys up as rulers of Nigeria, and then they begin to refer to a crop of people as leaders of tomorrow. For God's sake, when am I going to be leader of tomorrow at my age? All right? So, to the extent that we keep believing in the moment an individual occupies an office, he becomes deified. Once he's able to do some dramaturgy and some razzmatazz and whatever, he's able to go after certain people, and then, for heaven's sake, people think that, oh, he's performing. Okay. But fundamental to the idea of politics in Africa should be that Nigerians should be able to subject themselves to the rule of law. And the fundamental objectives as contained in Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution is that fundamental objectives and the directive principle of state policy, all right, doesn't have corruption as a policy. All right, to the extent that we have elevated it to become a national mantra, that is exactly what we are out to. There are other issues to address in national life. All right, because if against the backdrop of the fact that when you were a former military head of state, this is without prejudice to any personality, whether the president or not. To the extent that when you were in the military, the regime was renowned for, if people were disorderly on a queue or the bus stop, they have to be whipped online.
Or it's high.
But right here now in contemporary times, in democracy in the 21st century in Nigeria, has shown to us that when you're able to provide enough buses for people to take, there will be no need for people to hustle.
Yes.
Do you understand what I'm saying? A student leaving Nigeria for Liverpool has stopped in London, and when she had to catch the Greyhound, she was the only passenger, and the bus had to leave. So when you have infrastructure in place, when there is provision for good governance in place, people have no reason to be unruly. You understand what I'm saying? So there are areas by which you can address issues without being so draconian about it. Otherwise, we are back in George Orwell's world of 1984, Animal Farm, when some other animals are equal and some are more equal than others. And the opposition has been saying that for now, that exactly what is happening is that the moment you're able to get somebody who is a lackey of people in the executive is able to go after some other people who is not in the good books of the executive, then he begins to, and the very fact that a president can take a report from the legislature and willy-nilly, whimsically, like a Barrister Aboishade said, you can send it back to them, men take the order. Otherwise, you take it or leave it. That's not political. That's not democratic mentality.
All right, let's look at public reaction, to all of this now, and also what perception of President Buhari's administration will be from thence, because it looks like people are now polarized because of this. Some people are outraged by this, while some people think this is the right thing to do. Now, some quarters are saying Magu was rejected by the Senate because there are some people there who are afraid that if he comes back, he might go after them. you know what I mean now. Do you share that opinion, first of all? And then second of all, what do you think this will portend really for President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, and how the public, will see all this? Yeah.
Well, certainly not. Of course, every government, every individual would have apologists, people who, as it were, even in these hard times, the people who are still saying, I believe 100% in this government. The others were saying to her, bring down this government. So, it's natural. But as I said earlier on, we're talking about an institution. EFCC is an institution. If Magu doesn't go against anybody in the Senate and is removed and somebody else is there, and there is a petition, somebody's indicted, whoever comes on board would go after that person. So it's not a personal thing, as I said. It's not about Magu, because the EFCC is an institution. So if we're indeed fighting corruption, and there are allegations against any individuals, no matter how highly placed, as they want to call them, politically exposed persons, it doesn't matter who is there. Now, about the perspective or perception of Nigerians and indeed the world at large, of course, it is very clear that if one of the things I recall I said on TV severally, before Buhari came on board, before he swearing in, I said if he spent 4 years fighting corruption indeed, because I see corruption as being really a very serious national problem. Now, so if he was going to fight corruption indeed, he would have solved 50% of the problems of this nation. Corruption is at the center of everything, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I said, I qualified it indeed. But of course, what do we have? We do not have a total, a complete, in a committed fight against corruption. I have on my Facebook wall, I like making this reference, so I doesn't think you're saying this because of, if you go to my Facebook wall and look at it, you will see where I have said this already. Long before now. As for the fact that you want to enjoy your loot in this country today, if you're in PDP, cross over to APC and you're safe. And you enjoy your loot. I'm a Nigerian, I'm 15 years old. I don't know what, if I can't say the truth, what I think should help my nation at this stage, I should be dead. So, but that's the truth. Now, who are those that this EFCC have been like that? The ICPC have been like that. The police have been like that. The DSS have been like that. They go after whom they are allowed to go after, or whom they are told to go after. You dare not. Even in the days of the PDP, whether when Obasanjo was there or who, and say you want to go after a certain governor or ex-governor who is in the good books of the government, you lose that seat. That's what is happening. So as what is happening totally, the president is showing us that Magu is a good guard dog for him, whom he decided to say, hey, go after Mr. B. And he does the job well. Sit down and he sits. Raise your hands up and he does. That's simply what it is.
But then again, what does it really tell now as per the relationship now between the chambers of government, the legislature and the executive? I mean, does it really say that there's no love lost between the both of them?
Well, it's simply saying, maybe for once, that of course the legislature is showing a wide different arm of government. We are not an appendage of the executive. We have 3 arms of government. And of course, that's why some of us have quarreled with what happened with the Supreme Court judges. It does not show, indeed, the theory of separation of power. Of course, checks and balances is there, but the judiciary was, on that occasion, treated like an appendage or ignored. Because there was and still is a constitutional framework to deal with members, people, of that arm of government. And so as far as I'm concerned, if you breach it and treat that arm of government as if it was just an appendage of the executive, then there was something wrong as far as due process was concerned.
Okay.
So what has happened is simply saying, whether of course the apologists of this government will say, and some of the advisors of this government, I've read what they say and I feel appalled as a Nigerian, to say, you stand up and say these things like you've asked, that the reason why people in the Senate don't want Magu is because they are afraid he will come after them. I thought I've answered that. Of course, if Magu doesn't go after them, if whoever comes on board, he will still go after them. So it's not a reason whatsoever. But as to what this is doing to the image of this nation, and of course to the proceeded fight against corruption, it is simply saying that we're not serious. Or the government of the day is not serious. Of course, instances have been given by GalaxyToday, and of course, we know several other instances of people who were indicted who are in this government whose indictments have been ignored. Up to this moment, there are people who are facing petitions that I'm aware of before the EFCC who are acting as ministers. All of this is a shame. It shouldn't be.
And if you are talking about no love lost between the legislature and the executive, the better for the society. It's a Hegelian philosophy. Okay. That in every state or thing there's a contradiction which the conflict of the opposite must resolve. There has to be conflict of the opposite for the society to benefit from what is going on. Because it's the process of the dialogical relationship between the executive and the legislature and the judiciary that the society knows exactly what is going on. That is the beauty of democracy.
Right.
So it's not a question of having a legislature that is going to rubber stamp whatever the executive is rolling down. If the president is expecting that, then he'll be disappointed because those are not the tenets in the 21st century. All right? A century in which we can look at ourselves eyeball to eyeball and say, man, what are the facts on the ground? And the very fact that, like I said, I tried to use the allegory of Elijah in the Bible when he was crying to God that he was the only prophet in Israel. And God said there are 700. And I used to say that for every Fashola, for every Ribadu, for every Magu, whatever, there are 700 Magus in town here that hasn't taken any appointment at all. And that will do excellently well when they find themselves in office. So it's about demystifying office holders in Nigeria, and the mentality of mystifying people, of deifying characters, and making them look like they're superhuman, whatever they are doing. The laws are there for you to follow. All right. If whatever you have done is beyond, is ultra vires the law, then the law will tell us.
That's true.
All right. If it is ultra vires the societal expectation, the people will find out. And every law, of course, is subject to the RIP rule. I.e. that it must not be repugnant to natural justice, equity, and good conscience. It must not be inconsistent with the law being enforced, and it must not be against public policy. So at the end of the day, how do you gauge the temperament of law and practitioners of law? It's about what the expectation of the society is. So to the extent that we are no longer babies, 21st century people who are sitting down here in this kind of forum, we are more than old enough to govern Nigeria. And the very fact that people come up with connections, recycling, that's when you begin to have a backdrop of somebody that had been in government, that had contract, that had to award government contract to his companies and stuff like that. There are people in Nigeria that are still right there, minding the world of ideas, and they are doing their best to keep their head, up in the society.
Okay. All right, let's quickly look at some of the feedbacks we got on the program today. This one is coming from Abuja, and it says, re-nomination of Magu by the president is correct. The fault is from the Senate. They should have brought Magu to preliminary sitting and asked him questions instead of executive sitting. Ifek Mariola Shegun from Abuja sent that one in. This other one said, God bless you, sirs. You have really spoken my mind, Fernanda. Now, here is someone who supports the re-nomination of Magu. Like I said, there seems to be like some division in the way the public is actually viewing this.
All right, well, let me just take this one from Godwin before we wrap up. Godwin Obizo sent us a message on Facebook this afternoon. He says there's nothing like fighting corruption in Nigeria as we are seeing it now. All is fallacy. Why is the president renominating and renominating, for emphasis, a man with a questionable character? Is he the only competent man in the EFCC? Former governors that are ministers now are still receiving their salaries. All the government officials, their huge salaries and huge allowances are paid on time, and poor civil servants and pensioners are crying. What is the meaning of change? Begins with me.
Wow. Our time is gone, gentlemen. Quick last words from you in 2 seconds each, so we can close up.
This is our country. You're good enough to be president, like the VLs out there. So let's do the best it is, because at the end of the day, we are all victims of our actions. These, of course, like my brother here said, this is our country, as I said. You have cabals, you have people who have taken over, who have a stranglehold over this nation, who recycle themselves, their in-laws, their children.
Yes.
When would the young that they say, as he said, grow and take over? There are people with ideas, fresh, wonderful, nationalistic and patriotic ideas that want to move this nation forward. Let's give the opportunity for others for good governance to prevail, so that we can have a better nation for ourselves, so there can be security of life and of expectation, if you understand what I mean.
I do.
Security of expectation for every Nigerian.
Okay,
the last word.
Thank you very much. My suggestion is that in the 21st century, we need to play with the first 11. I remember one of the articles written by Ray Egbo in those days in Newswatch that Nigerians never play with their first 11. We should learn to play with our first 11. We should look for the best. Africa should seek the best. On the election day in Ondosi, I was on television, and they were asking me whether women should be given political office or they should take it by force. And I said, since 1973, when Nawal El-Saadawi wrote Woman 0.0, what are we waiting for? There were 2 people that had won the Nobel Peace Prize as sitting president in the world. That's Barack Obama and Salif Johnson. The other one is a woman. Yes. So what are we waiting for? There are more than enough characters in this country that can do very well. So the question of stereotype, the question of deifying an individual and say it is either this person or nothing. We should we really need to.
For want of time, we just have to wrap it up at this point. That's our show for today. I want to say many thanks to our guest in the house for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And also many thanks to Barrister Aboshade from Ibadan. All right, that's the show.